Commander Jake Morrison stood at the large window of the human diplomatic station, watching the busy traffic of Kepler Prime below. Ships from dozens of different worlds moved through the sky like metal birds. Some were long and thin like the Zephyrian traders, others were round and fat like the Thanari cargo vessels. But all of them followed the same peaceful patterns they had for almost 300 years. Jake had been on Kepler Prime for 5 years now, ever since the Federation had asked humanity to take over the diplomatic center. The other species trusted humans to be fair and calm in their dealings. They said humans were natural peacekeepers, always ready to help solve problems without fighting. Commander Morrison called his assistant, Lieutenant Sarah Kim, from across the room. Ambassador Carter is ready to present the aid package to the Zephyrian delegates. Jake turned away from the window and walked to the meeting room. Ambassador Lisa Carter was already there, sitting across from 3 tall, blue-skinned Zephyrians. Their leader, Minister Vex, looked bored as Lisa explained the details of humanity's latest gift to their colonies. Earth is prepared to send another 50,000 tons of food supplies, Lisa said, her voice patient and kind, plus medical equipment and building materials for your new settlements on Kepler 7. Minister Vex barely looked up from his data pad. The food shipments have been too slow lately. Our people are hungry because of your delays. Jake felt his jaw tighten. The Zephyrians had been saying the same thing for months, even though human ships were working around the clock to deliver supplies. Earth was spending billions of credits to help the Zephyrian colonies, but they never seemed grateful. We understand your concerns, Lisa replied calmly. I can arrange for faster shipping, but it will cost more. That is your problem, not ours, Vex said. Humans have always helped us. It is what you do. After the meeting ended and the Zephyrians left, Jake sat down next to Lisa. She looked tired, older than her 40 years. They treat us like servants, Jake said quietly. Lisa nodded. I know. But this is what keeps the peace. If we stopped helping, they might start fighting each other again. Jake understood, but it still bothered him. Humanity had joined the Federation almost 300 years ago, bringing their technology and their desire for peace. Since then, they had helped end dozens of wars, fed millions of hungry people, and built hospitals on worlds that had never seen medicine before. But somehow other species had started to see human kindness as weakness. Far from Kepler Prime, on the frontier world of New Colorado, Dr. Emma Wright was having her own problems with alien visitors. She ran a research station that studied new forms of life, working with a team of 20 scientists from Earth. The station was small but important, helping the Federation understand the biology of newly discovered worlds. Emma was looking at samples under her microscope when the alarm started ringing. She looked up to see her security chief, Sergeant Tim Brooks, running toward her. Krellian raiders, he said, breathing hard. 3 ships coming in fast. Emma's heart started beating faster. This was the 4th attack in 2 months. The Krellians were a species that lived by stealing from others, taking what they wanted and destroying the rest. They seemed to especially enjoy attacking human settlements. Get everyone to the safe room, Emma ordered. Send the distress signal to Federation Command. The attack lasted 20 minutes. Emma and her team huddled in the underground shelter while the Krellians blasted their equipment and stole their supplies. When it was over, half of their research was gone, and their main laboratory was in ruins. Tim checked his communication device. Federation security says they will be here in 6 hours. 6 hours, Emma repeated. They always arrive after the damage is done. This was the pattern Emma had noticed. Human settlements called for help. The Federation promised to send ships, but somehow those ships always arrived too late. Meanwhile, when Thanari or Zephyrian colonies were attacked, Federation forces appeared within minutes. Back on Earth, Admiral Ben Harper was reading reports in his office at Federation Command. The walls were covered with pictures of human colonies, ships, and the men and women who served in the human fleet. Ben had been in command for 10 years, and he was proud of what humanity had built in space. But the latest intelligence reports were making him worry. His staff had been tracking patterns in the attacks on human settlements, and what they found was troubling. The numbers don't lie, said his intelligence officer, Colonel Pete Martinez. Attacks on human colonies have gone up by 300% in the last year, but attacks on other species have stayed the same. Ben studied the data on his screen. Red dots marked every attack on human settlements, while blue dots showed attacks on other species. The red dots were everywhere, while the blue dots were few and scattered. "It's like they're testing us," Ben said, "seeing how far they can push before we push back." "That's exactly what I think," Pete agreed. "And so far we haven't pushed back, at all." Ben knew why. Humanity's leaders had decided long ago that their role in the galaxy was to be the calm voice of reason. When conflict started, humans stepped in to mediate. When people were hungry, humans sent food. When worlds were threatened, humans sent protection. But they never used more force than absolutely necessary. "Sir," said his communications officer, "we have a priority message from Captain Ryan Torres on the UFS Endeavor." Ben activated the screen. Captain Torres looked worried, his usually neat uniform rumpled and his face tired. "Admiral Harper," Torres said, "we've received a distress call from Meridian 7. The colony is under attack by Vorthak pirates. They've been fighting for 6 days and civilian casualties are mounting. I'm requesting permission to engage with full force." Ben felt his stomach drop. Meridian 7 was home to 30,000 human colonists, including many families with children. The Vorthak pirates were known for their cruelty, often killing civilians just to send a message. "What's your current position, Captain?" Ben asked. 3 hours from Meridian 7 at maximum speed. I have 4 ships with me, more than enough to drive off the pirates." Ben wanted to say yes. Every instinct told him to let Torres save those people. But he knew what Federation Command would say. "Hold position, Captain. Wait for diplomatic contact with the Vorthak leadership." Torres looked shocked. "Sir, people are dying down there. Children are dying." "I understand, Captain, but we follow Federation protocols. The diplomatic team will contact the Vorthak government and negotiate a withdrawal." "And how long will that take?" Torres asked, his voice tight with anger. 48 to 72 hours depending on their response." Torres closed his eyes for a moment. When he opened them, Ben could see the pain there. "Understood, Admiral. We'll hold position." The screen went dark, and Ben sat back in his chair. He felt sick to his stomach, but this was how things worked. In the Federation, humans were supposed to be the peacekeepers, the ones who found solutions without violence, even when their own people were dying. 3 days later, the news came through. The diplomatic negotiations had failed. The Vorthak pirates had killed over 1,000 colonists before finally leaving Meridian 7. The surviving colonists were evacuated to other worlds, their homes destroyed and their lives shattered. The Federation Council praised the peaceful resolution of the crisis. No one mentioned the dead humans or the families torn apart, or the colony that would never be rebuilt. In his office on Earth, Admiral Ben Harper read the casualty reports and felt something cold settle in his chest. Across the galaxy, humans were reading the same reports and feeling the same anger. For 300 years, humanity had chosen peace over power. They had shown mercy to those who showed them none. They had helped those who would never help them in return. But patience, even human patience, was not infinite, and the galaxy was about to learn that some lessons come with a terrible price. 6 months had passed since the Meridian 7 tragedy. The colony was gone now, its buildings empty and its fields growing wild. 30,000 humans had lost their homes because the Federation would not let their own ships fight back. Other species called it a peaceful solution, but humans called it something else. Lieutenant Colonel Amy Stone stepped out of her transport ship onto the space station orbiting Titan Base. She led a special team that investigated attacks on human settlements. Her job was to find patterns and report them back to Earth. What she had found in the last 6 months made her angry every single day. Colonel Stone greeted her intelligence officer, Major Dan Clark. "We have the latest attack reports ready for your review." Amy followed Dan to the briefing room. The walls were covered with maps and photographs showing damaged human colonies. Red lines connected different attack sites, and each line told a story of coordination and planning. "Show me what you found," Amy said, sitting down at the table. Dan activated the holographic display. Three-dimensional images of star systems appeared in the air, with attack routes marked in bright red. The pattern is clear now, Dan explained. The Krellian raiders, the Vorthak pirates, and the Thanari corporate forces are working together. They share intelligence about human shipping routes and colony defenses. Amy studied the display carefully. She could see how the attacks were timed to support each other. When human security forces responded to a Krellian attack in one sector, Vorthak pirates would strike somewhere else. When the Federation sent diplomatic teams to deal with the Vorthak, Thanari corporations would take over human businesses in a third location. It's not random, Amy said. They're testing our defenses and our response times. Exactly, Dan agreed. And they've learned that we always respond the same way. We send diplomats instead of soldiers. We negotiate instead of fighting. They know we won't hit back hard. The evidence was overwhelming. Amy had documented 47 attacks on human settlements in the past 6 months. During the same period, attacks on other species had actually decreased. It was as if the aliens had decided that humans were the easiest targets in the galaxy. On Kepler Prime, Ambassador Lisa Carter was facing her own problems. The Federation Council meetings had become increasingly hostile toward humanity. Other species were openly questioning human authority and demanding changes to old agreements. The humans claim too much space for such a weak species, declared Ambassador Thek of the hegemony of Sarn. His 4 arms waved dramatically as he spoke to the council. They cannot even defend their own colonies properly. Lisa stood up to respond, her face calm despite the anger building inside her. Humanity has contributed more to galactic peace than any other species. Our aid programs have prevented dozens of wars. Aid programs? Thek laughed, a sound like breaking glass. You mean the tribute you pay to keep stronger species from taking what should be theirs? Several other ambassadors nodded in agreement. Lisa realized with shock that they actually believed humans were paying protection money rather than giving freely from kindness. The Thanari Corporation has identified several human manufacturing worlds that would be better managed under our control, announced Ambassador Yeth. We propose transferring these worlds to proper oversight. You're talking about stealing human colonies, Lisa said, her voice rising slightly. We prefer the term administrative improvement, Yeth replied smoothly. Humans have proven they cannot manage their holdings effectively. The vote was close, but humanity's supporters were few. The proposal to review human territorial claims passed by a narrow margin. Lisa knew what this meant. The Federation was preparing to take human worlds away and give them to other species. Meanwhile, on the industrial world of New Detroit, factory supervisor Carl Bennett was dealing with the results of those political changes. Thanari Corporate. Raiders had arrived 3 days ago with legal documents claiming ownership of the largest human manufacturing plant on the planet. Carl stood in his office, watching through the window as Thanari security forces set up checkpoints around the factory. His workers were scared and angry. Many of them had families who depended on their jobs. They can't just take our factory, said his assistant foreman, Linda Hayes. We built this place with our own hands. Apparently they can, Carl replied, bitterly. The Federation Council approved their claim yesterday. The new Thanari managers had already made changes. Human workers were being replaced with cheaper alien labor. Safety regulations that had protected human employees were being ignored. The Thanari said human standards were unnecessarily expensive. When Carl's workers tried to protest, Thanari, security forces responded with violence. 12 human workers were killed in what the Thanari called maintaining order. The Federation investigation concluded that the deaths were regrettable but justified. Dr. Emma Wright was still on New, Colorado, trying to rebuild her research station after the latest Krellian attack. But her real work now was different. She spent her days analyzing data about attacks on human settlements, looking for patterns that might help Earth understand what was happening. Her findings were disturbing. The attacks were not just increasing, they were becoming more sophisticated. The aliens were learning from each raid, improving their tactics and timing. They're studying us, Emma told her research partner Dr. Kate Wilson as they worked in their temporary laboratory. Every attack teaches them something new about how we respond. Kate looked up from her computer screen. What do you mean? Emma pulled up a chart showing attack patterns over the past year. Look at this. The first Krellian raids were sloppy, random, but each one got better planned. They learned our patrol schedules, our response times, our weak points. And now? Now they can predict exactly how we'll react to any situation. They know we'll send diplomats instead of soldiers. They know we'll try to negotiate instead of fight. They're using our own peaceful nature against us. The data showed something else that worried Emma even more. The aliens were sharing information with each other. Attack patterns from Krellian raids were showing up in Vorthak pirate tactics. Thanari corporate strategies were being copied by smaller criminal groups. They're all working together, Emma realized. Not officially, but they're sharing what they learn about fighting humans. Back on Earth, Admiral Ben Harper was receiving reports that made him feel sick. His daughter Jenny was a teacher on the colony world of Eden Prime, working with children from dozens of human families. Last week, she had sent him a message that worried him. Dad, Jenny had said in her video call, strange ships have been spotted near our system. The colonial government says not to worry, but people are scared. The Thanari have been asking questions about our defenses and our evacuation procedures. Why would they want to know that? Ben had tried to reassure his daughter, but privately he was terrified. Eden Prime was home to 500,000 humans, mostly families and children. It was not a military target, but that might not matter anymore. The intelligence reports were getting worse every day. Colonel Pete Martinez brought him new evidence of alien cooperation against humanity. They're not calling it an alliance, Pete explained, but that's what it is. Every species that has attacked human settlements is sharing information with the others. What kind of information? Ben asked. Everything. Ship designs, defense patterns, diplomatic responses, even psychological profiles of human commanders. They know exactly how we think and how we'll react. Ben studied the reports. The picture they painted was terrifying. Humanity was surrounded by enemies who had been studying their weaknesses for months. And the worst part was that humans had made it easy for them by always choosing peace over strength. Sir, said his communications officer. Priority message from your daughter on Eden Prime. Ben's heart stopped. Jenny never called during work hours unless something was wrong. He activated the screen and saw his daughter's face, pale with fear. Dad, you need to know something. Thanari ships entered our system an hour ago. They say they're here for a trade inspection, but they're asking about our schools and hospitals. They want to know how many children live here and where they go during emergencies. Ben felt cold spreading through his chest. Jenny, get to the evacuation centers now. The colonial government says there's no danger. They say the Thanari are just conducting routine business. Jenny, listen to me carefully. Pack only what you need and get to the spaceport. Don't wait for official orders. But even as he spoke, Ben knew it might already be too late. If the Thanari were asking about children and evacuation procedures, they weren't planning a trade inspection. They were planning something much worse. Across human space, similar conversations were happening. Parents were calling their children, warning them to be careful. Colony administrators were quietly preparing evacuation plans. Military commanders were requesting permission to move ships into defensive positions. But the Federation command's response was always the same. Maintain peaceful relations. Avoid provocative actions. Trust in diplomatic solutions. The galaxy had spent 6 months learning that humans would not fight back no matter what was done to them. Now they were ready to test just how far that patience could be pushed. They were about to find out that even the most patient people in the galaxy had limits. The attack came at dawn on Eden Prime. Admiral Ben Harper was in his office on Earth when the first reports arrived. His hands shook as he read the message from the Colonial Defense Force. Multiple Thanari and Zephyrian ships have entered Eden Prime system. They are not responding to communication attempts. Colonial defense ships are moving to intercept. Ben tried to contact his daughter Jenny, but the communication lines to Eden Prime had been cut. He could only sit and wait while his daughter and 500,000 other humans faced an enemy fleet. The attack was not random. Intelligence reports showed that Zephyrian and Vorthak forces had hit 5 human colonies at exactly the same time. Haven's Rest, New Harmony, Ceres Station, Liberty Point, and Eden Prime all came under attack within minutes of each other. "It's coordinated," reported Colonel Pete Martinez, his face grim. "They planned this for months, hit us everywhere at once so we can't concentrate our defenses." The worst news came from Haven's Rest. The colony ship UFS Serenity had been trying to evacuate 50,000 civilians when Zephyrian fighters attacked it. The ship was slow and heavy, loaded with families and children trying to escape the fighting. Commander Jake Morrison watched the footage from his station on Kepler Prime. The video showed Zephyrian fighters diving toward the defenseless colony ship, their weapons blazing. The Serenity tried to run, but it was too slow and too big. "They're targeting the engine section," reported Jake's communications officer. "The ship is losing power." What happened next would haunt Jake for the rest of his life. As the Serenity began to break apart, hundreds of escape pods launched from the dying ship. Each pod carried a family or a small group of civilians, children, elderly people, pregnant women, all trying to reach safety. The Zephyrian fighters turned their attention to the escape pods. "No," Jake whispered, watching in horror. They wouldn't. But they did. The Zephyrian pilots, the same people who had received human aid for decades, began hunting down the escape pods one by one. They fired on defenseless civilians floating in space, killing entire families with single shots. 47,000 people died when the Serenity was destroyed. 3,000 more died in the escape pods. The footage of children's toys floating in space alongside wreckage was broadcast across human space within hours. Captain Ryan Torres received the news while his fleet was still held in defensive positions by Federation command. His ships were only hours away from Haven's Rest, close enough to have saved those people. But his orders were clear. Do not engage enemy forces without Federation approval. "Sir," said his communications officer, Lieutenant Sarah Kim, "we're receiving distress calls from all 5 colonies under attack. Casualty reports are coming in." Torres looked at the tactical display. Red icons showed the locations of the attacks, while blue icons showed human military ships. The blue icons were all marked with the same status: holding position, awaiting orders. "How many people are dying while we sit here?" Torres asked. "Current estimates suggest over 100,000 casualties across all 5 colonies," Sarah replied quietly. Torres closed his eyes. 100,000 people. Men, women, children. All dying because the Federation would not let human ships fight back. "Sir," called out his tactical officer, "New Harmony is requesting immediate evacuation support. They have 200,000 civilians trapped on the surface." Torres opened his eyes and looked at the display. New Harmony was only 3 hours away at maximum speed. His ships could reach the colony and begin evacuation operations before the attackers could stop them. But his orders were clear. On Kepler Prime, Ambassador Lisa Carter was making a desperate plea to the Federation Council. She stood before representatives from 40 different species, many of whom had been her friends and allies for years. 5 human colonies are under attack, she said, her voice breaking slightly. Civilians are dying. Children are dying. We need permission for our defense forces to respond. The response was swift and brutal. The humans have brought this on themselves, declared Ambassador Thek of the hegemony of Sarn. For too long they have claimed more territory than they can properly defend. The Zephyrians and their allies have legitimate grievances against human expansion, added Ambassador Yeth of the Thanari. Perhaps this conflict will teach humans the value of knowing their place. Lisa could not believe what she was hearing. These were species that humanity had helped for centuries. Earth had sent food to Sarn during their great famine. Human doctors had cured the plague that had nearly destroyed the Thanari homeworld. "We are not asking for conquest," Lisa said desperately. "We are asking for the right to defend our own people." "Humans have a history of violence," replied Ambassador Keith of the Altarian Union. "Once they begin fighting, they may not stop. It is better for galactic peace if they learn to resolve this diplomatically." The vote was devastating. 37 species voted to maintain restrictions on human military action. Only 3 voted to allow humans to defend themselves. The Federation Council calls upon all parties to pursue peaceful resolution, announced the Council President. Human forces will continue to maintain defensive positions only. Lisa felt something break inside her chest. She looked around the council chamber at faces she had thought were friends. Now she saw them for what they really were, enemies who had been waiting for this moment. Far from the political chambers, Dr. Emma Wright was fighting for her life. Her research station on New Colorado had been overrun by Krellian raiders. This time, they had not come just to steal supplies. They had come to kill everyone. Emma and her team were trapped in their underground laboratory while Krellian soldiers searched the facility above. She could hear them destroying equipment and laughing as they found her research files. "They're killing the wounded," whispered her assistant, Dr. Kate Wilson. Through the security cameras, they could see Krellian soldiers shooting human researchers, who had been injured in the initial attack. Emma had spent years studying alien species, trying to understand their cultures and motivations. She had written papers about the importance of interspecies cooperation. Now she watched as those same species murdered her colleagues for entertainment. Dr. Wright called one of her graduate students. "They're breaking into the lab level." Emma looked at her team. 12 people, all dedicated scientists who had come to this world to advance human knowledge. Now they were going to die because they were human. "Send the data burst to Earth," Emma ordered. "Everything we've learned about the coordinated attacks. Make sure they know this isn't random." The transmission went out just as Krellian soldiers broke through the laboratory doors. Emma's final report to Earth was simple. "The galaxy has declared war on humanity. We just didn't realize it until now." Back on Earth, Admiral Ben Harper finally received word from Eden Prime. The message was brief and terrible. Eden Prime defense forces have been overwhelmed. Colonial evacuation is proceeding, but slowly. Thanari ground forces have landed near the capital city. They are targeting civilian centers, including schools and hospitals. Ben's daughter Jenny was a teacher at one of those schools. He tried again to contact her, but there was still no response. The casualty reports kept coming in. Haven's Rest. 47,000 dead, colony abandoned. New Harmony. 30,000 dead, evacuation incomplete. Ceres Station. 15,000 dead, station destroyed. Liberty Point. 8,000 dead, colony under occupation. And Eden Prime. 22,000 dead so far, with the fighting still ongoing. Over 120,000 humans had died in a single day. Not soldiers, but civilians. Families. Children. Ben Harper stood in his office reading the names of the dead and felt something cold and terrible growing in his chest. For 300 years, humanity had chosen peace. They had shown mercy to enemies, kindness to strangers, and forgiveness to those who wronged them. The galaxy had taken that mercy and kindness and thrown it back in their faces. They had used human compassion as a weapon against humanity itself. In his desk drawer, Ben kept a classified document that he had hoped never to use. It was called Protocol Omega, and it had been written by human military planners 200 years ago. The protocol outlined what humanity would do if their peaceful nature was ever completely betrayed. Ben had always believed that day would never come. He had faith in the goodness of other species, in the power of diplomacy and cooperation. That faith died with the children of Haven's Rest. Ben Harper opened his desk drawer and pulled out the Protocol Omega file. As he read the first page, he felt his hands steady and his mind clear. The time for patience was over. The galaxy was about to learn what humans were really capable of when their children were threatened. Admiral Ben Harper stood before the emergency session of the Human Defense Council. The room was filled with humanity's top military commanders, all of them grim-faced and angry. For 3 centuries, this council had met to discuss peaceful solutions and diplomatic responses. Today would be different. "Gentlemen and ladies," Ben began, his voice calm, but carrying a weight that made everyone listen. "For 300 years, we have shown mercy to those who show us none. We have extended hands to those who would cut them off. We have protected those who would see us destroyed. Today, that ends. He activated the large display screen behind him. Images appeared showing the destroyed colonies, the burning cities, the bodies floating in space where the UFS Serenity had died. Protocol Omega is now in effect, Ben announced. All Federation restrictions on human military action are hereby ignored. Our people are under attack and we will respond with the full force of humanity. General Maria Santos, commander of the Human Space Marines, leaned forward. What are our new rules of engagement, Admiral? There are no rules, Ben replied simply. Save our people, destroy our enemies, show the galaxy what happens when they mistake our kindness for weakness. The transformation began immediately. Across human space, military commanders received new orders. Ships that had been held back for decades were finally released. Weapons that had been kept in storage were brought online. Technologies that humanity had hidden were revealed. Captain Ryan Torres felt his heart racing as he read his new orders. After watching helplessly while colonies burned, he was finally free to act. All ships, this is Admiral Torres, he said into his communication system. He had been promoted in the last hour, along with dozens of other commanders. Set course for Haven's Rest. Maximum speed. We have civilians to save and enemies to destroy. His fleet moved like a pack of hunting wolves. The ships were faster than anything the aliens had seen before. Human technology had been deliberately limited in Federation space, but now those limits were gone. The Vorthak pirates occupying Haven's Rest had no warning. Their sensors showed empty space one moment, and a human battle fleet the next. Torres had used technology that bent light around his ships, making them invisible until they chose to appear. Vorthak vessels, this is Admiral Torres of the Human Defense Force. He broadcast on all frequencies. You have exactly 60 seconds to surrender unconditionally, or we will destroy every ship in this system. The Vorthak commander's response was laughter. Humans do not fight. You will negotiate and make deals just like always. Torres smiled grimly. The time for negotiation is over. The battle lasted 14 minutes. When it ended, the entire Vorthak fleet was nothing but floating debris. Human ships moved through the wreckage, scanning for survivors but finding none. The pirates had learned too late that human patience had limits, but Torres was not finished. Intelligence reports had located the Vorthak leadership on their homeworld of Garrick Prime. Despite direct orders from Federation Command to cease all hostile actions, Torres led his fleet deep into Vorthak space. The Battle of Garrick Prime became legend. Human ships appeared in orbit around the Vorthak homeworld like angels of death. The planet's defense fleet rushed to meet them and was destroyed in minutes. People of Garrick Prime, Torres broadcast to the planet below. Your leaders ordered the murder of human children. Your pirates killed our families. You have 1 hour to surrender your government and military commanders, or we will demonstrate what human weapons can really do. The Vorthak leaders tried to call for Federation support, but no help came. The Federation was still debating what to do about human aggression, while human fleets were already solving the problem. When the hour ended, Torres gave the order that changed galactic history. Begin orbital bombardment. Target military installations and government centers only. Minimize civilian casualties, but make sure they understand the message. The bombardment lasted 30 minutes. When it ended, every military base on Garrick Prime was a smoking crater, and the planetary government was broadcasting their unconditional surrender. Meanwhile, Lieutenant Colonel Amy Stone was leading a very different kind of operation. Her special forces teams had been studying Thanari corporate facilities for months. Now they struck everywhere at once. The Thanari had built their power on the belief that humans would never use violence against civilian targets. They were wrong. Amy's teams did not target civilians, but they showed no mercy to anyone who had participated in attacks on human colonies. On the industrial world of Kepler-6, Amy herself led the assault on Thanari corporate headquarters. Her soldiers moved through the building like shadows, using technology that the Thanari had never seen before. Human military science had advanced far beyond what they had shared with the Federation. "Surrender now and you will be treated as prisoners of war," Amy announced over the building's communication system. "Resist and you will be treated as war criminals." The Thanari security forces tried to fight back, but it was hopeless. Human soldiers moved faster than Thanari eyes could follow, struck from impossible angles, and used weapons that seemed to bend the laws of physics. Within 2 hours, every Thanari corporate facility in human space had been captured or destroyed. The aliens who had stolen human factories and killed human workers now found themselves prisoners of the people they had underestimated. On Kepler Prime, Commander Jake Morrison was delivering humanity's ultimatum to the Federation Council. The council chamber was in chaos, with alien ambassadors shouting and arguing among themselves. "The Human Defense Force has a message for the galaxy," Jake announced, his voice cutting through the noise like a blade. "Every species that has attacked human civilians has 72 hours to withdraw from human territory and surrender those responsible for war crimes. Failure to comply will result in immediate military action." Ambassador Thek of the Hegemony of Sarn rose from his seat, his forearms waving angrily. "The humans cannot threaten the entire galaxy. The Federation will not allow this aggression." Jake looked at him calmly. "The Federation has already failed to protect human civilians. We no longer recognize Federation authority over human military actions." "You cannot do this," shouted Ambassador Yeth of the Thanari. "Humans are a peaceful species. You do not have the capability for real war." Jake smiled, and the expression was not pleasant. "You are about to learn how wrong you are." The ultimatum was broadcast across the galaxy on every frequency. Within hours, every species that had participated in attacks on humanity was in emergency session, trying to decide what to do. The Zephyrian response came first. Less than 48 hours after the ultimatum, the Zephyrian government was broadcasting their complete surrender. They offered to withdraw from all human territory, return all stolen property, and hand over every military commander who had participated in the attacks. The speed of their surrender shocked the galactic community. The Zephyrians were known as proud warriors who never backed down from a fight, but they had seen what happened to the Vorthak, and they understood what human ships could do to their homeworld. "How did they surrender so fast?" asked Ambassador Keth of the Altarian Union during an emergency Federation meeting. The answer came from an unexpected source. Dr. Emma Wright, who had escaped the attack on her research station, was now serving as humanity's chief advisor on alien psychology. "They finally understand what we really are," Emma explained to the Federation Council via communication link. "For 300 years you all believed that humans were naturally peaceful. You thought our kindness meant we were weak. You were wrong." She activated a holographic display showing human military capabilities that had been hidden from the galaxy for centuries. "Humans are not peaceful by nature," Emma continued. "We are peaceful by choice. We conquered our own violent world before we reached the stars. We developed weapons that could destroy planets, then chose not to use them. We built fleets that could conquer the galaxy, then chose to explore instead." The images showed human technology that was centuries ahead of anything the Federation had seen. Ships that could move faster than light without using jump gates, weapons that could crack moons, defensive systems that could protect entire star systems. "You mistook our restraint for inability," Emma said. "You thought because we chose not to fight, we could not fight. This was your error, not ours." The revelation sent shockwaves through the galactic community. For 3 centuries, they had been living next to a species that could have conquered them all at any time, but had chosen instead to help them build a better galaxy. Now that choice had been withdrawn. Admiral Ben Harper received a message from his daughter Jenny, just as the 72-hour deadline expired. She was safe, evacuated from Eden Prime along with the other survivors. But 22,000 humans had died on her world, including many of her students. "Dad," Jenny said in her message, "I know what you're about to do. Part of me wants to tell you to stop, to find another way. But when I think about my students who died, about their parents who will never see them again, I understand. Some lessons can only be taught with strength." Ben nodded as he watched his daughter's message. She was right. The galaxy had refused to learn from human kindness and mercy. Now they would learn from human power and determination. The Krellian surrender came on the third day. Admiral Ben Harper watched the transmission from his command center on Earth as the Krellian war chief knelt before a human camera, his proud warrior culture broken by the reality of human power. The Krellian clans surrender unconditionally to the Human Defense Force, the war chief said, his voice shaking. We offer our ships, our weapons, and our warriors as tribute. We beg mercy for our people. Ben felt no satisfaction in the moment. Too many humans had died for him to feel anything but cold determination. The Krellians who had murdered Dr. Emma Wright's colleagues would face justice, but revenge would not bring back the dead. Accepted, Ben replied simply. All Krellian forces will withdraw from human space immediately. War criminals will be surrendered for trial. Your homeworld will be placed under human protection to ensure compliance. The word protection carried new meaning now. The galaxy was learning that human protection could be more frightening than human anger. Dr. Emma Wright stood in the rebuilt research station on New Colorado, watching as Krellian ships retreated from the system. 3 months ago, these same warriors had destroyed her life's work and killed her friends. Now they fled like frightened children from the approach of human patrol ships. Dr. Wright called her new assistant, Dr. Paul Martinez. The Federation Council is requesting your testimony for the War Crimes Tribunal. Emma nodded. She had spent the last month documenting evidence of the coordinated attacks on humanity. Her research proved that the assault had been planned for years, with multiple species working together to eliminate human influence in the galaxy. They still don't understand, Emma said, looking at the retreating ships. They think this was about territory or resources. They don't realize it was about something much more important. What was it about? Paul asked. Trust? Emma replied. Humanity trusted the galaxy to be better than it was. We believed in the possibility of peace and cooperation. They used that trust as a weapon against us. That kind of betrayal can never be forgiven, only remembered. On the industrial world of New Detroit, factory supervisor Carl Bennett was overseeing the return of human workers to their jobs. The Thanari corporate raiders who had taken over the facility were now in prison, awaiting trial for war crimes. The Thanari government had paid massive compensation to the families of the workers they had killed. It feels strange, said his assistant foreman Linda Hayes as they watched human flags being raised over the factory once again. 3 months ago we were powerless. Now the Thanari are begging for our forgiveness. Carl nodded. Fear is a powerful teacher. The Thanari learned that stealing from humans carries a price they can't afford to pay. The changes went beyond individual planets. Across the galaxy, species that had once dismissed humanity as weak were now competing for human approval. Trade agreements that had heavily favored alien species were being renegotiated. Colonies that had been taken from humans were being returned with additional compensation. Captain Ryan Torres, now an admiral commanding the largest human fleet ever assembled, stood on the bridge of his flagship above the world of Haven's Rest. The colony was being rebuilt, but it would never be the same. Too many had died for the scars to fully heal. Admiral, reported his communications officer, Lieutenant Sarah Kim, we're receiving requests for human protection from 17 different species. They're offering to place their military forces under our command. Torres studied the list of requests. Many came from species that had voted against humanity in the Federation Council just months before. Now they wanted human ships to protect them from the same raiders and pirates they had once supported. What do you recommend, sir? Sarah asked. Torres thought about the children who had died in the escape pods from the UFS Serenity. Accept the requests from species that genuinely want protection. Reject the ones who are just afraid of being next. We're not conquerors, we're protectors, but we protect those who deserve it. The distinction was important. Humanity had not become the galaxy's overlords through conquest, but through the simple demonstration that they could protect their friends and destroy their enemies. That made them more powerful than any emperor. Ambassador Lisa Carter found herself in an ironic position. The Federation Council that had once dismissed her concerns now hung on her every word. Species that had ignored human requests for months now sent their most important diplomats to beg for meetings. The Human Federation is prepared to discuss new trade agreements, Lisa announced to the Council, but only with species that can demonstrate their commitment to peaceful coexistence. The Council chamber was silent. Everyone understood what demonstrate commitment meant. It meant proving that they would never again mistake human kindness for weakness. "What about the hegemony of Sarn?" asked a nervous Altarian representative. Lisa looked at the empty seats where the Sarn delegation used to sit. "The hegemony chose to test human resolve rather than accept our diplomacy. Their homeworld is now under direct human administration until they learn to behave peacefully." The fate of the Sarn served as a lesson to the entire galaxy. They had been the most vocal opponents of human weakness and the first to celebrate attacks on human colonies. When their own worlds came under threat, they had discovered that their military was no match for human technology. Now Sarn children learned human history in their schools, and Sarn leaders reported to human administrators. It was not conquest, but it was complete control. Commander Jake Morrison had been promoted to admiral and placed in charge of the new Galactic Security Force. His mission was simple: ensure that no species ever again organized attacks on innocent civilians. "The rules are very basic," Jake explained to a gathering of alien military commanders on Kepler Prime. "Disputes between species will be resolved through arbitration, not warfare. Any attack on civilian populations will result in immediate military intervention. Any species that cannot follow these rules will be removed from positions of authority." The commanders nodded eagerly. They had all seen what happened to species that challenged human authority. None of them wanted their worlds to share the fate of Garrick Prime. "What about the Federation?" asked a Thanari general. "The Federation still exists," Jake replied, "but it now operates under human oversight. We've learned that some species need guidance to make good decisions. The new system was not democracy, but it was effective. Wars between species ended because everyone knew that human ships would arrive within hours to stop any conflict. Pirates and raiders disappeared because human patrols made their activities impossible. Trade disputes were resolved quickly because no one wanted to anger the species that controlled the most advanced military in the galaxy." Admiral Ben Harper stood in his office, reading reports from across human space. His daughter Jenny had returned to teaching, working with children from a dozen different species on the rebuilt world of Eden Prime. The children learned human values alongside their regular studies, ensuring that the next generation would understand the importance of peace. "Sir," reported Colonel Pete Martinez, "the Zephyrian government is requesting permission to name their new capital city, Harper's Landing, in your honor." Ben smiled sadly. "Tell them to name it after the children who died on the UFS Serenity instead. Those children are the reason we fight, not me." The memorial to the Serenity's victims had become a pilgrimage site for dozens of species. They came to understand what humanity had lost and why humanity had responded with such force. The names of 47,000 civilians, many of them children, served as a reminder of the price of aggression. Dr. Emma Wright published her final report 20 years after the day humanity's patience broke. Her conclusions were simple but profound. Humanity's greatest victory was not in the battles they won, but in the restraint they showed afterward. They could have conquered the galaxy in weeks, enslaved every species that had wronged them, and ruled through fear alone. Instead, they chose to rebuild the galaxy in their image of what it could be. The galaxy had learned to fear human anger, but they had also learned to value human protection. Children of a dozen species grew up safe because human ships patrolled the space lanes. Colonies flourished because human technology, shared freely, made life better for everyone. Wars ended before they could begin because human diplomats had the power to enforce their decisions. "No species will ever forget the day humanity's patience broke," Emma wrote. "But more importantly, they will never forget the day humanity chose to rebuild, rather than simply destroy." The memorial on Haven's Rest bore a simple inscription: "Here died children of Earth who trusted in galactic peace. Their sacrifice taught the galaxy that peace must be earned, not assumed." Let all who read this remember, kindness without strength is weakness, but strength without kindness is tyranny. Humanity chose to be strong so they could afford to be kind. The galaxy was peaceful now, but it was a peace built on understanding. Everyone knew that humanity could end any threat to innocent life within hours. Everyone also knew that humanity would protect those who truly sought peace. The children who learned this history would never make the mistake of testing human patience. They had seen the price of that error, and they had no wish to pay it themselves.